Hey everybody, this is Peter with Tabletop Gaming Guild, and I'm very excited because we're going to be taking a look at another one of the products in the Runes of Symbaroum 5e line by Free League Publishing, and we're going to be taking a look at the Game Master screen today. And we're going to take it down the table, we'll open it up, it comes with a booklet as well as the Game Master screen itself, and we'll see what it is that they think is necessary for us as Game Masters to run this game for our friends. We'll take a brief look at the booklet with the adventures. We don't want to give anything away for those of you out there who might end up playing in one of those games. And then after we take a look at it, we'll come back up from the table and I'll give you my final thoughts on this screen and how useful I think it is. So let's go ahead and take it down to the table and take a look. All right, everybody. So we're down to the table with the Runes of Symbaroum 5e GM screen, and we're going to flip it over real quick and we're going to read what is on the back. Game Master's screen. With the Runes of Symbaroum game line, the acclaimed setting of Symbaroum comes to the world's most popular role-playing game rules. This Game Master's screen and adventure booklet will serve you and your friends well when you start exploring the game world using the 5th edition OGL rule set. The Runes of Symbaroum Game Master's screen provides easy access to important tables and information from the Player's Guide, Game Master's Guide, and the 5th edition OGL rule set, including marks of corruption, enemies in Davokar, and a listing of various conditions. The screen comes with a 28-page booklet featuring the 2 adventures, Where Darkness Dwells and The Gathering Storm, suitable for player characters of levels 2 to 4. All right, so again, this is the Game Master screen for the Runes of Symbaroum 5e by Free League Publishing. And again, 5e, you all should know, hopefully by this point, what that's in reference to. Again, as it states here, the world's most popular role-playing game rules. And what we do have, like it said here, is we have the Game Master screen itself. And then we also have a 28-page booklet that has 2 small adventures in it already, Where the Darkness Dwells and The Gathering Storm. The first one here states that it's for characters levels 2 through 3. And then the second adventure in here states that it's for characters levels 3 through 4. And you can see here, the first one is only about 10 pages of text, with some images as well. We've got some maps to utilize for the game, whether you're going to be running this virtually on some kind of online tabletop simulator, or whether you're going to be playing it at the table. You have your maps so that you can draw those out or put those together. And then we do have a little bit of art as well, especially here when it mentions the adversary, the main adversary that the party is going to be going up against. Each of these is broken down very similarly to most of the adventures that I've seen for 5e. You get your introduction, your background, the situation the party finds themselves in, some information for journeying as well, and then locations as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close that up because I don't want to give too much away for anybody who is hopefully going to be playing in these games eventually. Including some of the Tabletop Gaming Guild guys, because I'm thinking about hopefully running at least 1 or 2 of these for them. And we're going to go ahead and get to the rest of what comes in this pack, and that is the Game Master's screen. So the Game Master screen, let's see if we can get a decent shot here. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's 3 panels, like a lot of Game Master screens. And this one is probably, so most of Free League Publishing's games, they come out with their Game Master screens. They came out with one for the One Ring, and they've got one for, just regular Symbaroum. And I don't have one for Vesson. I assume they've got one, but I don't have one of those yet. The big thing here is that I like it, but it's probably one of the least evocative pieces of art that they have done on one of their Game Master screens. It's not that it's a bad piece of art. There's just not a whole lot there, but that's probably also kind of the point, because I'm assuming that this picture is taking place somewhere in the forest of Davokar where there are ruins. But surprising, I'm looking through the image and I'm not seeing any bad guys here either. So normally on the Game Master screen, there's an evocative piece of action happening between the players and some of the bad guys, and this does not have that. But it also does capture the idea of this being a very deserted place, a very dark and corrupted place. So it does get that, but it's very dark, not a whole lot going on, not a whole lot to catch your eye other than the bright scene down here with, I'm assuming, our two adventurers. So an interesting piece of art, not my favorite piece of art on their Game Master screens. But the really important part is what's on the other side. How are they helping the Game Master as they run this game? On the left panel, we have a good few things here. We've got difficulty class ranges. This is a table that I think is very useful for a GM, and this tells you the level of the range level that your characters may be at. So if they're characters between first and fourth level, then it says here the difficulty classes that you set for them, how in percentages, how possible is it for them to succeed at these rolls. And I think that's actually very useful. And it goes all the way up to level 20, which 5e does. And I think this is one that I would use, again, whether I'm running D&D, 5th edition basic, or if I'm running Runes of Symbaroum, I would find this table to be very useful on the GM screen. Some of the other ones, they're a little less useful for me anyways in all the games that I've played. I'm not really picky and a stickler on all the different types of economy and the money system, but they do have some things on here for you for that. So like if you're spending money to keep up a specific lifestyle, here's some information for if you're living modestly, how much are you needing to pay each day to live a modest lifestyle, all the way up to aristocratic if you're doing that as well. And again, the money here is for the Runes of Symbaroum, so they're ortegs and shillings and thalers. They've got expenses for regular day services. This I could find to be a little bit more interesting, a little bit more useful, because some of these things are going to come up. So if they decide to stay at an inn, it says here a bath at an inn is 3 ortegs. I would probably role play out a good scene in an inn, and they're trying to pay for specific services, and these things I would probably utilize. So just the generic expenses, the lifestyle expenses, I don't really utilize a whole lot in my personal games. They've got a thing here about settlement types and how much items can cost in those areas, and level of risk, intent, and size of bribe. I think that is kind of interesting because they do mention that bribes in the player's guide, that bribes are one of the ways to get information. And so there's some interesting things here about like how difficult that would be, how much the bribe is going to cost, all those types of things. Down here, they do list the days of the week and the months of the year. I think that's good information to have in the player's guide. I don't know that it warrants being on the Game Master's screen. It's taking up a little bit of space, which I think could have been utilized for some other stuff, but I'll get to that in a moment. This right here is probably the number one thing besides the difficulty class ranges and the success chart. This is huge. I'm so glad they put this on here because it's the marks of corruption table. This is definitely going to come up in your game. No matter who you are, if you are running Runes of Symbaroum, marks of corruption are going to be a thing, and you're going to need to be able to reference it. And so the fact that it is on the GM screen, so you don't have to go look it up in the book, is fantastic. I do love, though, again, that they do this. They add the page number right next to the title of the table. So I love that they reference the page number for the player's guide as well next to it. So this is definitely... of this one, part of the screen here, these two are the ones that I think are definitely the most pertinent to the ones that you're going to probably want to utilize, I would think, a fair bit, actually. So our next screen here we actually have another really, really important piece of information for Runes of Symbaroum, and that is the rest mechanics. And that's because if you watch the player's guide review video that I did previously, this is definitely it's been modified from the regular 5th edition rules. It's very important for the way that the game style is going to be played. So I'm really glad that they did this, and they gave it quite a bit of space to really spell out what needs to happen there. So that's probably going to be, again, looking at the middle screen portion of the screen, this is going to be the number one used thing, I would think, at least by myself. They do have information here on modes of travel, and this is the forced march, the death march, and the forced rides and the death rides. And I'm assuming that this is going to come into play some, so I'm glad that they gave it a location on the GM screen. They give us a little bit of information here for the types of enemies that the players might come across in Davokar. And it says here GG, so we have PG if it's in the player's guide, GG if it's in the game master's guide, and runes in Davokar and encounters in Davokar. So right here you have a way of pulling together, just by doing some rolls on a d20, what encounter they might be running into, what location they might be going into, and other kind of enemies that they might be running into. You would just roll on these 3 charts, and that would pull together kind of a small encounter for your party. And then there's also some information here, another rolling chart here for terrain in Davokar. And each one of these things, I think, would go really hand in hand with putting together a quick scenario. So if you've not done a lot of prep beforehand to know exactly what you're going to be running for your players, you could use these 4 tables here and probably pretty quickly put together at least a very basic encounter for your session of Runes of Symbaroum. These are all very helpful. I do a lot of planning, though, ahead of time. I might use these in my earlier portions of my planning, but at the table itself, I don't know how much I'm going to actually utilize those, because I'm not somebody who usually sits down and just randomly throws together a session. I try to plan ahead of time, but it's nice that it's there for those of you who might not have the time to prep, or somebody just stops by the house and you decide to play a game, then that's there as well. And then our last portion of the GM screen is mostly just conditions. So if you're familiar with 5th edition, these conditions are your very basic conditions that you're going to run into in the game with some bulleted point explanations. This is a good thing to have on the GM screen for anything that's 5th edition related, because conditions do come up fairly often throughout the game because of spells that are cast or different things like that. So having that there is really good. I like that is it. The only thing that it stinks is that it takes up a whole panel, but there's no other real way to do it and to be thorough enough. So I think it is good that they gave it the space that they did. And again, I run into this situation a lot. I think, well, maybe if they could have just put a 4th panel, make it a 4 panel, give me the GM more space at the table. Let me push the players to the other side. I'm just kidding. The one thing that was in the player's guide that I really, really would have loved to see make it to the GM screen is some information about the social encounters that they've added. So in the player's guide section on new rules, they mention the short rest, the long rest, the extended rest. They mention the marks of corruption when they talk about shadows and corruption. But they also talk about social encounters and how to run a social encounter. So for me personally, I would have wanted to see maybe this panel somehow narrowed down a little bit. We could have maybe even gotten rid of the difficulty class ranges possibly, and just done a whole section right here about setting up those social encounter mechanics, because there's some dice rolling involved with it. And I thought it was a really, really cool new thing that they were adding into 5th edition, the same way with adding in these marks of corruption and editing a little bit the resting mechanics. That social encounters bit from the player's guide, I thought was really, really great. And some of these things here, which, you know, they're interesting, but I don't know how often they're going to come up in a daily game or, you know, in your regular session. And you could just look it up in the book later. But the social encounters mechanic I thought was interesting enough that I would want to use it fairly often. And I don't want to have to open up the book every time I want to reference it. So that's probably what I would have put on this portion, just because if this GM screen is specifically for Runes of Symbaroum 5th edition, then I would like it to reflect their mechanics that they are adding to the game. I still think you need conditions because they're important enough to 5th edition as it is, and they've done a good job of adding in some of their own stuff, but that social encounters part missing. I just think that was an oversight to not put that onto the GM screen. My personal opinion. But overall, another really great GM screen. It's very well made. It's very sturdy. It looks like it's going to last me a good long time, and I will definitely get a lot of good use out of it. So that is a quick look at the Runes of Symbaroum 5e Game Master screen. Let's go ahead and get up from the table, and I'll give you my absolute final thoughts. All right, everybody, we are back up from the table. We just finished taking a look at the Game Master screen for the Runes of Symbaroum 5e products by Free League Publishing. And this is a good GM screen. Like all of their other products, it's well made, it's sturdy, it looks good. My two quick little quibbles was I thought that the image on the outside that would be player facing is not the most probably evocative of images that they could have put on there. It's very dark, which I get that fits the setting, but it's also not eye-catching. It's not something that I think can really like immerse the players in it. I always like to have an image on the other side that when the players look at me and they look down at the screen, it's going to be an additional thing that adds that brings them into the game that we're playing. This one, I'm not sure. It might bring that, but my initial thought is probably not. It's just a little too dark, and not as much stuff going on in it, not as much action going on it as I would personally like. And then the other small quibble is that I think that they really should have put the mechanics for their social challenges that they added into this game. It's in the player's guide. It's right in there in the second section about new rules. And they did add most of that stuff in here, all the new rules things in here, except for that one. And I think that's the one thing that's definitely missing that should have gone onto the GM screen. A couple of those things that I mentioned could have been taken out. I think that they're not going to be as useful as that would have been. Other than that, I think it's a good GM screen. I like the conditions panel is great. The middle panel has a lot of really good information about building your encounters and stuff. So yeah, another great product by Free League Publishing. I'm always super excited when their products show up in the mail. They make wonderful things. If you're interested in checking out their stuff, you should head over to freeleaguepublishing.com, check out all of their phenomenal games. And if you liked this video, go ahead and maybe give it a like and subscribe to our channel, where we have videos coming out each and every day, playthroughs and reviews, lots of great stuff. And until we talk again, everybody, keep on playing games.